Welcome to Second City Liberty, a Chicago-centric podcast that takes a look at politics, current events, sports, and pop culture through the lens of liberty. I'm your host, Jim Hume. Thanks for tuning in. The February 28th municipal election here in Chicago will feature candidates for mayor, city council, and the newly created police district council. District councils have been created in each of the city's 22 police districts. 3 council members will be elected to each district every 4 years. The council's purpose is to build stronger relationships between the police and communities at the district level. The demand for more community oversight of the Chicago Police Department has its roots in the civil rights movement. Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party were the first to suggest some sort of civilian control. And since then, a number of steps have been taken to achieve this objective, eventually leading to the formation of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. But until now, no one serving was democratically elected. The Empowering Communities for Public Safety Ordinance that created the council and the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability are the result of a number of high-profile police killings. The murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis was the impetus for the passing of the ordinance, but support for civilian oversight gained attention with the killing of Recca Boyd in 2012 and developed even more traction after the 2014 shooting of Laquan McDonald. My guests today are Chris Laurent, who is running to represent the 14th Police District, which covers parts of Bucktown, Wicker Park, Humboldt Park, and Logan Square, and Deondre Rutues running in the 15th District, which is primarily the far west side Austin neighborhood. Hello, Chris and Deondre. Welcome to the podcast.
What's going on, Jim?
Here.
Thanks for having us.
Maybe Deondre, you could start off first, and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what's kind of motivated you to run for this this newly created police council position.
All right, y'all. So I'm Deondre Rutues. As Jim mentioned, I am from the far west side. I'm neighboring Oak Park as well as Cicero to the south, and that essentially talks about the boundaries of the area in which I'm running for, the 15th district, which go from Roosevelt to Division, Austin to Cicero. And just a little bit about myself is I'm from this community. I'm from the Austin community. I mean, grammar school to high school, I'm Austin through and through. And I currently a PhD student. I'm essentially wrapping up the PhD. I'll be walking across the stage in July in business psychology. Former candidate for public office, ran in 2019 in the 37th ward, which also has a little bit of the Austin community in it. Currently, I live in the 29th ward, but still live in Austin off of what was called the Island. First-time father, man. I always got to throw that in because I'm just happy to be a dad for the first time around, and my baby has all her limbs, so I think I'm doing a good job at that because she's about to turn 3. And all of the appendages are still attached. So
far, so good.
That, man, you know, I've been doing this type of work for a long time. 2012, when Trayvon Martin got killed, was the first time that I stood up for my community, and I've never sat down. From then on, I took part in just tons of anti-violence rallies, inserted myself in different types of conversations that's needed in the community. I know a lot of people look at the work that I do as activism. I feel like I'm more of an advocate because not only am I on the front lines when it's time to do, you know, protests and things like that, I'm also in the back rooms trying to have discussions on how do we improve the circumstance. And so to that end, when I started working with Chicago Police in 2018, with a program called the Chicago Neighborhood Policing Initiative, I thought the best way to carry on this philosophy of policing, which is problem solving in community and helping to establish better police relationships with the community while using the resources and the organizations that exist currently. I thought that was just the best idea for what policing is supposed to be. And so for me, I'm running for this particular position because I've had negative interactions with Chicago police, and I've also had very positive. And now, as an older man and a person who has worked with the people, I can see the individual behind the badge and understand that not every police officer does idiotic things. But for those that do, they need to be held accountable. And so to continue the work that I've been doing, I'm on the district council to make sure that the bad apples are removed and the people that actually want to do work in the community that already do work with the community are elevated so that we continue to move forward with positive public safety.
And Chris, maybe a little bit about your background and what motivated you to run for this position.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim. And that's a tough act to follow with DeOndre. I know he's a very exceptional person, and I'm looking forward to working with him in this new role that we'll both have. Fingers crossed. So basically, I live in the Avondale neighborhood, which is also included in the 14th district, and I have zero experience as far as activism and everything like that. However, I do have a lot of work with the government. 14-year Navy veteran. I was a chief petty officer before I left. Settled here in Chicago in 2010. Owned my house here in Avondale, and I love my neighbors. One of the main reasons why I'm running is I love my neighbors. We have a constant fear that we keep running into that the crime is really, really starting to get very dangerous. Less than a week ago, I had gunshots right in front of my house. And things like that is okay. Crime needs to be addressed, and if the aldermen aren't going to do it, then somebody with the cojones should step up and take their place.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's definitely been, I guess, both a real and a perceived increase in crime. I know, especially in carjackings, and that has been a problem in. I'm in the 12th police district, which is kind of runs from Pilsen to Ukrainian Village, and that's kind of been a hotbed of that particular activity, especially along like the Kennedy Expressway. They like to grab cars and jump on the highways. So it's definitely something that's been a problem, or at least an issue with the voters. I know we've got the mayoral election that's happening simultaneously, and obviously public safety is probably the number one issue on the voters' mind. I think the relative story, or recently, is the Tyree Nichols situation in Memphis, where the police, 5 or 6 police, were caught on film, body cameras, street cameras. It was just a situation that, I mean, and all of these that we've seen, from George Floyd to Laquan Martin, or McLean McDonald, and all these, they're all different to some extent, but to me anyway, this just seemed like a pretty egregious event when it comes to kind of lack of concern for the citizens. And of course, this was in Memphis. It's not the Chicago Police Department, but it does kind of show a institutional problem with law enforcement that I think is kind of spread across the country, concentrated in a lot of urban areas. And whether it's as bad as some activists will have you believe, or not, as some law enforcement spokespeople will have you believe, the perception is certainly there. So that is certainly something to address, and it's very timely event that was kind of in the news here this week. And then this other came up with this other officer here in Chicago, Jeffrey Krivev, charged with 4 counts of perjury, 5 counts of forgery. Here's a law enforcement officer that was reporting his vehicle stolen, his car stolen, to get out of tickets. He also had issues in the past with some complaints filed against him. So to me, this is a kind of an example of a certainly abuse of power that can happen within the law enforcement community. Go ahead and feel free to make any comments or address either of those issues, or kind of that accountability in general.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. Looks like DeAndre may be having some connectivity issues. I mean,
No
first
problem.
and foremost, I'll address it in the order you presented them. The Tyree Nichols incident in Memphis. First and foremost, that wasn't police work. That was a vendetta, and it was carried out by more than one person. So it was an organized crime, is what I would characterize that as.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way.
I don't know the motive behind it. I'm certain that the jury that they appoint to adjudicate this issue will uncover that, and I'm certain hopefully we'll get some kind of clarity on. I don't think there's an excuse for doing such, but hopefully we'll get some kind of what caused this, an impetus, if you will, of that incident. As far as the police officer that scammed the city out of his speeding tickets and everything like that, it's one of those things to where it's like, okay, well, this is what happens when you don't watch the pot. The water boils over, so to speak, to put it into an analogy. Part of my plan is I want to implement with the community council and with City Hall. Hey, let's do an annual check on our officers, both mental and physical, and let's even look into what's going on with their lives. If they're making all of these reports, hey, that should raise a flag and have some level of investigation.
Yeah. The second story is I just read about that myself. That's crazy. Come on, man. You report first of all, like, all right, how do you get to the point where you report? And I'm assuming it's the same car, 22 times stolen, and no red flags go off anywhere. I think one of the things that is an issue for me as it relates to the government that we have here in the city of Chicago is the administration doesn't work. I don't have to be in that office to know that the majority of the dollars goes towards administrative individuals. But the administration isn't working. It ain't just this administration. It's a lot of them. You know what I mean? Because we have multiple forms of government where the bulk of money is spent on people sitting at a desk, but things like that goes undetected. So I do think what Chris said, in terms of the ball being dropped, so to speak, like that's crazy. 22 times for the same vehicle and not a red flag went up anywhere. So
yeah, he seemed to have found maybe a loophole that he's like, oh, if I report my car stolen, I know I'm going to get out of these tickets. And
that's cool.
Somebody knew what was going on other than just him, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would like for that person, if it's on me, if we're talking about accountability, they need to lose their job. Then they need to figure out and I'm sure the city will do and launch an investigation, and the proper means will be taken in regard of who all was involved. But come on, man, that just makes us look worse as a city. Stuff like that.
If I could jump in real quick on that.
Please.
First of all, the guy retired, so he should lose his pension as well. That's number one. And two, the underlying, it's like, okay, well, it's funny this guy scammed the system. But wait a minute, if you reported his car stolen that many times, how many man hours were spent searching for his stolen car?
Yep.
Right.
How many people were accused,
Right.
wrongfully accused of conducting such behavior?
Right.
Yeah, or even just the administrative time spent to file the reports. That's all tax dollars that are being spent frivolously.
That's what I'm saying. And too many tax dollars are already going towards administrative things, and we just don't seem to have the best administrators, period. And again, in a lot of different areas of government, not just the city. I mean, you could point it out in all the places. The other piece, so the Tyree Nichols thing, man, that's so unfortunate. As a black man, I understand that crime happens in proximity. So I'm more likely to lose my life or to be attacked by a black person than I am a person of another color. And it's magnified when it happens. If it was a different person that committed such crime, and it essentially, when it's like that in terms of black on black crime, that that's kind of, we're used to that. But I don't think we're used to seeing officers that are black also attack black people in that type of way. Typically we ask for more black officers because we believe that there's going to be some leniency there. There's going to be some understanding and being able to relate because of, coming from the same culture and background. And so when you see something like that, that just goes to show you that sometimes being blue even is even more powerful than being black, and so that hurts. That really hurts that brother lost his life at the hands of other brothers. But then the other part that also is reflected in this situation is the fact that they were charged very quickly. Mm-hmm. They lost their jobs very quickly, and I'm sure they're going to do time very quickly. And the opposite does not happen, and the same does not happen when it's a person of opposite color. So it's just like, man, we lose on so many fronts.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's and obviously I don't know if you guys are on Twitter much. I mean, I am, but the past few days when this has happened, there have been all kinds of perspectives on it. But I think it really does show that those kind of preordained ideas, prejudice, if you will, exists out there. That might even it's related to race, but it also transcends race. There's just that attitude of even African American officers, when they're approaching a black suspect, are treating them differently. And I think that kind of reflects just the whole kind of conflict between what's going on out there on the streets, and it seems like this may have other deeper motivations behind it. We'll see what all develops, but for all these incidents that have gotten notoriety over the past decade or so, this just strikes me as one of the most egregious for sure.
Man.
Well, it's certainly unprecedented. So it leads the mind to wonder, like, okay, well, what precedent are they going to follow?
Mm-hmm.
What precedent are they going to follow when they adjudicate this? Are they going to look to what the Minneapolis courts did? Which was just equally heinous, but not as bad, because that was one person as opposed to 5 people. So like I said, it was a coordinated attack is essentially what it was. Absolutely.
And the officers that were involved with this, in my understanding, were part of a special a special task force, a special strike team. Yeah. That poses a whole nother issue as far as I'm concerned as well. We can bring up some information here on the militarization of the police force. Right. To combat crime, police have gotten more armed, more armored. They have military vehicles for crowd control, and it really, to me, it promotes much more of an us versus them mentality when you're militarizing the police, and instead of they're not there to protect and serve the community. Now they are an occupying force. Now they are an army that is out there, and that just has a whole different mindset, both on the side of law enforcement and on the side of the community.
I agree. I mean, I spent a year in Afghanistan, and it's not that I ever had the desire to intentionally hurt people because I could and they couldn't do anything about it. I guess I'm just a morally centered human being, and I care for other people. But no, basically, the longer you sit there and you have the biggest stick in the bunch, you're going to sit there and start playing around with that stick and see how much damage you can do with it sometimes. Not that it's an excuse. I think that you're absolutely right, though. We're basically setting them in a combat zone, if you will, to where they get all the big, expensive, big sticks, if you will, and sooner or later, let's see what this stick can really do.
And they have to justify using those
Right.
resources, or they're not going to get anymore. So if they have all these toys that are just sitting in a lot somewhere or sitting in an armory somewhere gathering dust, well, the next time the federal government wants to, send some stuff their way, they're not going to get it because they're not showing a need for it. So it's kind of a cycle where it's use it or lose it, or we have to show a need for it, and we have to show that we do need these resources, and it becomes problematic after a while, where they may be using the stuff when it's not necessarily needed, just for the justification of being able to have access to those resources in the future.
The use it or lose it mentality, right?
Yeah, for sure. But also to take the other side of things too. This is an article I just noticed today. 34 officers shot in the line of duty in January of 2023 already. That's 89% increase over 2021. I guess there were not statistics available for 2022, according to this article. So that that definitely shows the law enforcement is definitely at risk themselves. Some of these numbers aren't nearly as bad as they were in the 70s, for instance. There was a lot more incidents of this, but it does definitely show a trend where more officers being injured in the line of duty, and this article even goes into showing there's some seem to be coordinated attacks on police officers as well. So we do have to, kind of the other side of the coin is to understand what law enforcement is dealing with on a daily basis when they are out in the community.
Speaking of today, actually, two officers were ambushed, and one was killed, the other was injured. So yeah. And again, that's why, I think if you come into the Black community and you ask about policing, there's many more of us that are favorable to the police. Black Lives Matter or defund movement, but damned, because we understand that we do live in a violent community. We live in under-resourced, underdeveloped, divested communities that don't have a lot of opportunity within it, or at least the way we visualize opportunity. It's difficult to see beyond what you've seen your entire life. Now, I recognize my community is full of opportunity, but I'm involved. I know about the resources, the organizations. I'm politically involved, and many are not, and so they only can see it from the lens at which they view it from, and that's understandable. But we understand that because of that, now you have individuals who migrate to gang life, who migrate to selling drugs and standing on corners daily to make some money, who feel like this is the only way in which they could provide for themselves economically. And then that turns into a situation where they're going to enact violence on one another and other people in order to feed themselves, so to speak. So police are very much so needed. We're not against police, but at the same time, we also are not for police coming into our community that have no connections with us, that feel like the only way to interact with us is if we are all aggressive beings that are selling drugs. So for those officers that approach in that manner, the district council and people like myself are in place to say, listen, that we can no longer tolerate that. We got to figure out a way in which you're going to come here and be a part of what we're trying to do in terms of moving public safety into a positive direction. And we want to work with you if you want to work with us. If not, then you don't need to be behind this badge, because this might not be the job for you. You know what I mean? And again, protecting and serving is one thing, but being able to problem solve, to actually help us with the root cause of the issues, is a total other that a lot of police officers are willing to do. according to the data from N3 or Corners that they're called now, Northwestern, that has tracked a program that I've worked with since 2018 as it relates to working with community and police and bringing them together. And so if we could figure out the medium between having police officers come into our community and problem solve while also removing the negative element, then we could figure out the best way to move forward with the relationships and again, increasing positive public safety. But we're so far from that. And I mean, I got to be honest, because again, we are policed by people that don't understand. I'm gonna pass the mic right after this. So, for example, I was talking with Deputy Chief Navalis, and so he was talking about having some recruits, right? And the recruit, they were riding around in the car together, and the recruit saw some black people. Now, black people sit in the front of the house. That's what we do our kicking it. To my knowledge, white people do it in the back of the house. You know what I'm saying? So when we're sitting out front, you know, we're loud, with music going, barbecue, whatever we do it up front. So
on the front porch,
right?
Front stoop. Mm-hmm.
So as he's driving through with Deputy Chief Navalis, he's like, "Oh man, should we? Like, what are they doing? Should we?" And he's like, "Nah. See, he's like, that's how they do it. Now I understand you from Mount Prospect and y'all go in the back, but no, they are in the front, like you know." And so it's that type of thing. Like you get these officers that are just the protect the serve, gotta stop the element. And it's like, but that's regular for us. You got to become conditioned to that to understand that. And that's where a lot of that friction and those problems come from.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm more of a side yard kind of guy. So, but no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the most important thing is, first and foremost, police are not robots that were shipped in from some faraway land.
Right.
They're actually members of our community.
Right.
At least they should be anyway. So they're our neighbors. They're human beings. The statistic that you brought up about the police officers being shot down, and I think more importantly, what kind of drives it home here is that a lot of our police officers here in Chicago have been committing suicide.
Yeah.
That's an issue that needs to be addressed. And I don't care, if you're pro police or anti police, they're still human beings. And these are probably precious lives, I'm certain, that we lost and didn't have the opportunity to really embrace and offer a helping hand to.
Yeah, and it seems in particular the ones that are kind of have the mental or suffering from mental health issues are not necessarily the ones that are
forthcoming with it. Right?
Yeah, forthcoming with it, and it's really part of just a look. The cops or the police are portrayed in a bad light by the media, and then they're out on the streets dealing with the community that kind of sees them in this way. So even the good cops or the ones that are really there and do care about the community, they're caught under this umbrella.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. When these shootings and incidents happen, it gives all the cops a bad name, and that is certainly something that they suffer from. But obviously, one way to start to help out there and prevent some of that is to change that perspective. And the way to change that perspective is, hey, let's try to find ways to eliminate this kind of unnecessary violence by the police force.
Right. Well, and violence all the way around. I mean, it's all about accountability at every level. If we're going to expect the police to operate on a certain level, we need to meet them there as well. We need to conduct ourselves as people, as citizens and community. Hey, look, the level of expectation is here. We're going to be right there next to you. Let's all conduct ourselves in a civilized society. They say taxes are the cost of living in a civilized society, and I'm still curious after 50 years. Where's the civilized society I was promised?
Yeah, how's that working out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say though, we got to take historical context into we got to take history into context here as we talk about police relationships too, because I mean it was not too long ago that Chicago police was coercing confessions out of wrongfully accused people.
They literally they had literally had a black ops type of site where they could bring suspects on Holman, yeah, and resorted to kidnapping, torture. I mean that's not that long ago. That's I'm 55 years old, and that's like I remember that clearly. That was not that long ago. You're talking what 2019 or 1990. Turn of the new century when all this was still going on. So yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. The cops have that reputation in Chicago, and that's certainly something that they have to work to kind of change that perception as well, for sure.
Yeah. I taught at the police academy for a short bit of time, and one of the things is so they have to now they're doing implicit bias training, and it's necessary, but at the same time though, officers also have to be realistic and they got to be forthcoming about actually who they are and what they think about. And I say that with this example is that we were going through some of the slides about the implicit bias piece, and I told them, and I said, I was like, all right, so, and they, well, what do you mean by implicit bias? I say, okay, well, let's just think about it like this. Let's say you were on patrol and you were riding through one of the West Side neighborhoods, and some guy come out the alley, hood on and tattoos all over his face, man. You as you're driving by, you might want to take a more careful eye on that guy. Look at him and say, I ain't saying he did anything, but I'm gonna watch him a little closer. And so the officer was like, no, you're lying. We don't think like that. We would never. I'm like, see, man, like we can't even be honest with each other. I said, first of all, I live in the neighborhood. If I seen that guy, let me make sure, I don't trust him. He was like, no, I'm just saying now, if he went up and started slapping a woman around, then yeah, I was just like, come on, man. So you mean to tell me you're not going to pay a little bit closer attention to this guy with tattoos all over his face that's coming out the alley with a hoodie on, over his head like at that? Like, come on, I'm just saying we got to also be honest about the way we approach things, because I don't want you to be just because I'm the black man in front of the class teaching and I'm talking and I'm giving an example that you're like, nah, it's not like that, when clearly it is. Because even to myself, I would think that person needs to be watched a little closer, because I'd be damned if, you go one block over and then this the same guy that did something to somebody and you like, damn, I could have probably prevented that if, like, nah. So I'm just like, we got to be honest with ourselves too. They go through a lot of training, but at the same time, some of that training may not be valuable if at the end of the day, they're still going to lie to themselves and say that some of these things aren't true.
Yeah, and and I'm sure they think it in their head, but they've part of their training is to try to remove that thinking, right? So there has to be some kind of happy medium where we can kind of allow law enforcement to use a little bit more instinct and whatever to try to prevent some of these some crime from happening. But at the same time, they do also have to be more aware of how that reacts on the community. Police used to walk a beat or have the same group of officers kind of cover the same beat in communities for a lot, and they would get to know who lives on the street and who doesn't live on the street, and gotten farther and farther away from that. I know here in our neighborhood, we used to have a substation for the 12th district just a few blocks away. budget cuts and made that unattainable. So like a lot of those were closed now, right? So you might have one cop shop per district that is covering a pretty large area.
Yeah.
And that really kind of moves people, officers, away from the community or away from all the neighborhoods, and you're just kind of sending them out like UPS drivers to patrol the streets instead of really getting more engaged with what's going on in the communities, and which is why I think this whole police council concept, I think, is a good idea on paper. It'll be interesting to see how things work out. Now, obviously, being on the council, there's limits to what you do, and a lot of it is designed to be as kind of liaisons between the community and the police for sure. But a lot of those policy decisions are made at the administrative level, at the city council level. But I believe that part of the council's responsibility is also to kind of review some of those policies or any new policies that might be being considered, is to at least have some input from the community level on some of those policies. So I think that at least the door is open there to maybe get some things changed slowly, but at least there's a step in the right direction.
Well, and Jim, not to correct you here, I know it's your show, but
Please.
There's actually a tier between us and city council, and
correct,
which is a community council.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually are going to be charged with helping select the candidates for that. They're not going to be general election like how we run. It's another buffer or another step on the climb, if you will, as far as getting things done. I think that, hey, if we're going to be constructive about it, there's no such thing as a bad idea.
Yeah, no. From my understanding is that the three district council members, you have like a chair, and then one's more like a community liaison, and one's more looking to find those candidates for the CCPSA, the kind of that appointed council in between, and make recommendations to the mayor's office and the city council to who those people should be.
Yeah, no, you said that just right. So there's going to be 7 individuals selected for the CCPSA, and those individuals from the district council. So we have an interim in place right now. Their terms are going to come up next year, when the district council is fully implemented. Of course, will be fully implemented in May 2nd, I believe, or something like that. And then, once we probably get a year under our belts of understanding, then those guys will be up for some of them could actually go, if they want to get reelected, they can go back in front of us. Otherwise, you should have an entirely new commission made up from those individuals that choose the nominating slot. So you said just right. There's going to be the chairman slot, the organizer or facilitator slot, and then the nominator slot for the district council roles for the 3 individuals. And I do think, though, and I don't think this has been talked about as much, but as it relates to policy, because we should build coalition for community, we should be able to go to them and say, hey, let's just say no foot chase policy, if that was still on the table. So, hey, the city of Chicago or the CCPSA is thinking about a no foot chase policy. What do you guys think about it? Right. And then we can go for our corners of the city, gather people's thoughts, and then now we got a big bucket of, all right, this is what people are saying from community level, how they think that this would be if enacted, and then get community input that way. So they haven't talked about that being something that is a part of the district council, so to speak. But I do think that is something that we could do. I don't see a reason why we couldn't.
Yeah, well, to at least like kind of advise and consent on some of these policy decisions anyway.
And from my perspective, I think this is, of course, it's a tragedy, and I'm not trying to leverage off of a tragedy, but I think that it kind of takes the argument away from qualified immunity. Nobody can really stand behind, keeping qualified immunity around. especially after what happened in Memphis.
Yeah, qualified immunity is obviously a big an issue with me as a libertarian. Yeah, that it's a special treatment for basically all government officials, and that kind of shields the police department from these bad things that they can do. Not totally, obviously, but it is an issue. I think particularly in Chicago and Illinois, it's not something that needs to be looked at. With the recent passing of the Amendment 1 back in November, though, it does give the unions a lot of power. So even if there was a law passed that limited qualified immunity or reduced the qualified immunity, the police union could certainly negotiate in their next contract to ignore that or to kind of make their own rules. And that Amendment 1 that passed gave unions that power. So it's going to be problematic, but it's still something I think we need to address. We need to fight for, and hopefully that the law enforcement and the police unions realize that this is something that the citizens want, it's something that the voters want, and that the union wouldn't try to negotiate something like that away in a negotiation in the future. Kind of the other issue that frost my chops, as they say, is the civil asset forfeiture. And again, that's not something that could certainly be handled by the police council. That's something that really needs to be addressed on a administrative level, statewide, countywide, citywide. But the ability for the law enforcement to confiscate without conviction, and then have an innocent person try to fight to get their property back, their money back, right. Anything like that. If the cops pull you over and you have a stack of money in your car, and you're going to buy a gift, a TV, maybe you're buying it. That article I pulled up was about a couple guys that were going to buy a used car, and they're going to pay cash. And the police assumed that they were going to be using that to buy drugs. They took their car, they took their money, and even though they were found not guilty, it was an expensive and long process to try to get that back, and some of it was never recovered. So that certainly is another issue that to me just is a abuse of power by law enforcement over the citizens. Again, not much a police council can do about it, but it is something to kind of just add to the that abuse of power by law enforcement that can really almost terrorize citizens that just for being suspected of wrongdoing, of breaking the law.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as far as the qualified immunity, and I think this also taps into the same pool of what we're talking about here. I'm a reasonable person. Hey, if they're going to be ardent and keep qualified immunity, that's perfectly fine. Let it come out of your pension, your pension slush fund, rather than the taxpayer.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. These millions and millions of dollars of payments that have gone out to the families of victims of this police violence, deaths and injuries. It's the taxpayers that are paying for these mistakes or violence by the police department, and yeah, they don't have that accountability in that way. And certainly, I would totally be in favor of, if you keep qualified immunity, you're protected by doing your job, but at the same time, then yes, the union or your fraternal order police and all this, and maybe that's where that funding comes from. If there are any issues like this, it definitely would help add to the accountability.
Well, absolutely. I'm sorry, Deondre, I'll let you go ahead and jump in here.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, they should pay for their own insurance. If they had to pay for their own insurance, taking out $1 million or whatever it's going to take, if they were to do some idiot type of actions that causes somebody harm or death, Like, yeah, I think that would change I think that they will be more they will be less likely, I should say, to do things in such a hasty manner that would cause an injury or death, especially when it's unwarranted. I sympathize with officers because they do have the power of death and life in their hands, and they have a split second to think, or it could be them not going home to their families.
Absolutely.
And that's a risk that you take for putting on that uniform and that badge. It's no different than a military person. You know what I mean? But when you, in both of those instances, like, there has to be a moral code that you go by. There has to be principles and values that also come with that position that has to go towards the human lives that you are actually putting your life on the line for. And so to that end, especially as it relates to Chicago, because we've put out, I'm sure the number's billions of dollars right now at this point of how much we've had to pay individuals. I think one way, if qualified immunity is still going to exist, then the officers themselves should pay for I don't know, whatever the average number that they end up paying individuals in these type of instances. That money should go directly to some type of insurance, and if nothing ever happens, maybe that money just has collected so that when they retire they can get it back.
Right. I think having them kind of carry their own liability as well is going to attract a different type of person to law enforcement as well.
Right.
Someone that is like, no, I really want to do this for the community, to help the community, to help my neighborhood. So it's gonna attract, I think, a different breed or a different mindset. Something else that we can kind of talk about real quick too is there's a lot of talk about using counselors or mental health professionals to address a lot of incidents that are now the responsibility of the police department. Maybe your thoughts on, is this the right way to go? Should it still be handled by law enforcement, or maybe some kind of combination of the two? Chris, if you want to comment on that.
I didn't realize. No, I think a combination of the two is a very good approach to it. I know some people seem to think that keep the police out of it, or no, don't leave the psychiatric professionals out of it. I think it should be a combined effort. Because for a number of reasons. One of which is the fact that, okay, well, if a police officer goes there, his primary duty is to protect the psychiatric professional. They're there, to make certain that they're in and out of there safe. Plus, if there's any other threats, he can sit there and address those while the professional is attending to what he was called out there for, he or she rather. But I don't think that the police are equipped for it either. I think one of the shared benefits of it is that they build a rapport with these professionals to where it's like, hey, when they need help, instead of turning a gun on themselves, they actually sit there. They know that they have a friendly ear that they can talk to work out their problems as well.
Yeah. I mean, and they may, I think that, they may actually, learn something from, engagements with these type of individuals from a mental health standpoint as well. Like, I mean, you look at like you look at like George Floyd and some of these incidents that were happened where, the law enforcement is engaging this individual, and whether it's because of mental illness or narcotics, they're in an agitated state, and it seems like a lot of law enforcement doesn't. They need a better job on de-escalating those type of situations, and instead of matching the force with force, really need to learn how to like talk those people down and have it a much less violent conflict. So definitely introducing someone who is trained in mental health it will go a long way in preventing some of these incidents, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the regard of the mental health aspect, are we talking just as it relates to officers going out to calls, someone should be along with them, or we're talking about their mental health as well.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, both. Going out on calls. If you have someone, if you have someone brandishing a knife on the street, yelling at the sky, obviously the police need to be involved. But
Yeah,
that's probably something that a mental health professional also needs to be involved with to try to de-escalate that situation. And if the law enforcement can interact with these mental health professionals and maybe even pick up a little something, learn a little bit more about how to de-escalate these, how to deal with these mental health crises, then I think in turn, when they are themselves kind of suffering or experiencing issues, there's not so much of the stigma behind it that's creating a lot of these problems. I believe they would be much more understanding and open to actually, actually talking to somebody or speaking with them. I mean, that's a big part of it, is kind of the stigma behind the mental health issues, and not wanting to show weakness, not wanting to show, well, if my superiors get a hint that maybe I'm depressed or this, that, no, I'm off duty, I'm on desk duty, I lose my weapon. And so obviously all these things, they are preventing them from getting the help that they need.
And just one thing, and everything you said is absolutely accurate. But then again, it's like, wait a minute. So I get moved to desk duty and I lose my weapon. Those are good things if you're going through a mental health crisis.
No, absolutely, and they should be. But as a law enforcement officer, I'm sure that's something that that's part of the reason why they conceal that type of these type of feelings or mental illnesses.
Yeah. Not only that something like that could potentially prevent you from a promotion.
No, absolutely, for sure.
Now that stuff is carried with you in your folder and stuff like that, and and again, can't speak for them because I don't know this to be the case. But if it was me, I would recommend that they see someone quarterly. Because officers, we don't realize that officers have to, go from call to call. One call could be literally staring at the back of somebody's skull, while the body is laid out on the ground, just shooting blood everywhere, blood and guts and brains everywhere, which I've been told this. One of the officers, I responded to a call where a mother was holding her son who was hit with an AK-47 rifle and all of his guts and stuff. And she's just trying to put it back in his body, screaming, and then, 20 minutes later, they got to make a regular traffic stop.
Yeah.
Like, anybody in their right mind gonna be like, the highs and lows is way too much. So it's like, they have to get, to me, it got to be recommended like quarterly. But then at the same time, I think we got to educate the community in general, and the community meaning police and general community, because, it's people that'll call the police for that knife wielding man versus calling the mobile crisis unit. You know what I mean? And so we also have to be educated about mental health. And, speaking to the stigma point, like, I'm a person, as I mentioned, I'm a psychologist myself, but before that, I started seeking therapy to unpack my childhood traumas and things like that. So I openly talk about the necessity of going and just talking to somebody that doesn't know you, that can actually offer you some type of, advice or just motivations for change that could move you into a positive direction if need be, or just somebody you could just go lay your stuff on and be able to, unpack it and move on from it if that's ultimately what you're trying to do, And so knowing that I come from a community where our first inclination was to, just give it up to God, and it's like, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not in those days and times anymore. No, man, you can give it up to God, but you need to go see that man that's sitting right here. Because that's his job. He's able to talk to you and help you through some of these issues as well. And so we just need a lot of education on both sides, community and police, to really help with this issue, man. Rom did us no favors back when he was the mayor and closed so many mental health institutions, and we are still fighting to get them back, man. And everybody that's again with the movement of defunding police or reallocating resources, this is all they're saying. Can we get some resources that is so needed that we don't have, that we used to have, that we closed down? That's it. That's all. Like, bring some of that here. And maybe if we can get that officers inside to talk about, some of these things that they experience and go through and be comfortable with doing it, then maybe, both communities can become more educated and grow and understand and utilize that resource, not to be stigmatized by it,
Yeah, we have to change the culture all around. I think it's definitely moving that way. But like anything else, it's a process that takes time.
Right.
Just to kind of wrap up, then, any thoughts on the mayoral race? The number of candidates. I believe there's 9 candidates running for mayor. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but are there any candidates that you think would be more of an ally towards someone, the police council, or is there a particular candidate or candidates that you think would be easier to work with?
Well, one of the things that I don't like is most of, if not all, the candidates have rarely mentioned the district council. I'm not saying they did not. I'm just saying that they ain't did enough of it, because the district councils aren't getting enough of our own media attention. I went to a meeting today where everybody was mad at me for just coming. Hey, I'm on the ballot. Hey, what? Who chose you? Who said you had to be the guy to represent the community? How'd you get on the ballot? What is this? District council, community commission. How is it that this is about to happen right now? And ain't nobody. I said, I don't know. I'm just coming to tell you about what's going on, so that at least you still got 3 weeks to figure it all out. But and so I would love it, man, and I think people would understand it and know it more if the candidates who get all the airtime put it out. But they really haven't. You know what I mean? So to that end, we don't know how they feel about the district councils. We don't know what their working relationships will be. We know that everybody has a different idea of what policing needs to be in this city. And so for me, I would say that I am leaning Brandon Johnson, mostly because I like his treatment, not trauma plan, and some of his ideas for what he would like to do in terms of continuing some of the development going on South and West Side. I'll also say, man, the man trying to tax us into oblivion. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on, man. Damn. What's up with all the taxes, man? And then we had a forum that was close that we did over here on the West Side. I thought Paul Vallis had the best answers for everything, man. So, it's an interesting race. I broke it down into tiers. I say elite tier is Lori, Vallis, and Chewy. Top tier is Brandon, Sawyer, and Willie. And then the bottom tier is Jamal, Cam, and Sophia. And so
Right.
me,
That's accurate.
To me, that's where we at. And, some people can move some things around, but, so, it's just, that's how I feel about it, man.
Chris, any thoughts on the mayoral candidates?
Well, I agree with a lot of what DeOndre is saying. However, I cannot get behind Brandon Johnson. It's the tax thing. It's like, look, we pay more taxes than most people in the U.S. For our dollar's worth less here to us as taxpayers as they are in Seattle, Washington, or New Jersey, even. It's just it's basically like showing up to the park with a loaf of bread for the birds. Every bird's going to get it out of you. So I think Paul Vallis is very promising. I think he's very balanced as far as policing. I know he's got the endorsement of the police union, but I think that he also has recognized that we have issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, and for full transparency, Brandon Johnson was my opponent the last election cycle for Cook County Board of Commissioners. If he were to become mayor, there would be a special election coming up, and hey, maybe I'd run again. So who knows? But anyway, Chris and DeAndre, I think you can throw your websites on there, DeAndre, if folks want to reach out to you, find out more about your candidacy and campaign. I know when I was running, volunteers, donors, things like that are always helpful. So anyone that wants to reach out, I would encourage them to do so. Chris, LaurentForChicago.com, your website, if people again are in your district, want to learn more or help out, I would encourage everyone to do so. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. Hopefully you can come back again, maybe after the election, and you'll both be on the council, and we can continue this discussion on communities and law enforcement well into the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It looks like we're going to be tasked with a lot, so we're always going to be looking for input, and I'm looking forward to working with DeAndre.
Yep.
Great. Well, good luck to you both, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for joining me. If you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button to stay updated on the latest episodes. If you're tuning in through Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast app, click follow to stay in the loop. You can also follow me on Twitter at Second City Liberty. That's the number 2, ND City Liberty. Check out my website, www.secondcityliberty.com. And if you have an idea for the show or a guest that you would like to see appear on the podcast, shoot me an email, jim@secondcityliberty.com. Until next time, stay safe, stay strapped, and stay based.